Hi Ghosties, I'm Maci.
And I'm Natalie.
And we're changing things up for this week. So it's Halloween week, and we wanted to give you as many stories as possible. We've got hundreds of listener stories, so we're going to give you 2 listener stories this week. We just wanted to get in the mood and tell some spooky stories together.
It's the time, it's the season, it's the week to do it, so I'm excited.
Yes, and I hope you are too.
And these listener stories always freak me out the most because it's coming from real people that listen to the pod. Like, it's not just something you got off the internet.
Yes, I'm more inclined to believe you guys than I am a Reddit post or something.
Yes, so I'm very excited.
Like, if all of you took the time to write this down and send it in to us, then it must have touched you in some way.
Either it's real or you're really dedicated, and either way, I want to hear it.
Yeah, we'll give you the praise. Our tea this week is Harney and Sons, Paris. This was suggested to us by several people as well. I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, me too. She was reading off all of the notes in it and everything, and I think it's going to be good.
And this mug has become my personality now. So
yeah, I'm jealous. Let's go. Yeah.
Dare I say my new favorite?
Yeah. That's a good one. That's right up our alley, or mine at least.
Yeah.
You like 98% of the teas. I like probably 5%.
It's true.
This is a good one.
And this encapsulates everything that you like about any of the teas that you've liked so far.
100%.
That's great. A little bit of cream or a little milk in there.
Mm-hmm. Also, before we get started, I just needed to say, look at this blanket. It's a tortilla. It's an HEB tortilla. One of the greatest blankets I've ever had in my entire life. It's shaped like a tortilla. It is circular. And I just needed to give it recognition before we get started.
It's very cute.
Yep. And your blanket's cute too.
Yes. Which you can order at ghosties.com if you're interested. Also, I want to shout out Natalie's shirt. It's Billy Loomis, everybody's horror crush.
Yep. Love. I'm really feeling, I told you before we started, I'm feeling really in my element. I usually get like longer and like a pink color nail. I got short black nails. I got my Billy Loomis shirt. I got my HEB tortilla blanket. I'm feeling real good.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
All right, let's start. Our first one comes from Liliana. She sent us an email. Hello, ladies. I've been enjoying your YouTube podcast on repeat. I have several ghostly encounters, but this one is the most unbelievable. I was 12 years old when my parents and I moved to a 2-bedroom apartment. Everything seemed to be normal for several months until one day, it wasn't. One day I was alone at home working on my schoolwork when I felt someone watching me. I looked up and saw a shadow of a man. The thing about the shadow is that it looked much darker or fuller. I believe this is my first encounter with a shadow figure. Anyway, I then looked back to see whose shadow it was, but no one was there. I quickly picked up my things and went to my room and locked my bedroom door and waited for my parents to come back home. After this incident, the radio would turn on and off, change radio stations, and even increase and decrease volume. The TV would also turn on and off, and of course, this all happened when I was alone in the apartment.
Oh, it always is. It can never be whenever you feel safe. You have to be vulnerable.
Yes. One day when my parents were outside with friends having a barbecue, I was in my room watching TV. The channel started to change, and I would change it back to the channel I was watching, but it would just start to change back. I got up from my bed to quickly head outside, but then noticed that the radio turned on and off and would turn the volume way high. I ran outside, told my mother, but she just brushed it off, as she always did.
I think that's just a parent way of being like, I'm scared too. No,
a coping
don't talk
mechanism?
about it. Yep, because that's what I would do too. Be like, no, that's not real.
Years later, my dad mentioned that he would get his blanket pulled quite often in the apartment, and the reason my mom would brush things off is to, quote, not give them power.
I knew it.
After this event, I would almost run to my room when walking in the hallway. I would always feel like someone was standing really close to me or staring at me. We only lasted 1 year. After our lease was up, we moved to a home, which it would have its own ghostly encounters. Thank you for reading this. Best wishes, Liliana.
Okay, so what happened in the new home?
I know, leaving us on a cliffhanger.
Is the ghost attached to y'all? Is it attached to the apartment?
Yeah.
Oh, that's freaky.
I really wonder what made it increase in volume. Was it her fear? Like when she got afraid of it, it
Maybe.
Like grew in energy and ability.
Mm-hmm. So that means it's something dark, right? If they're feeding off of like your energy, you being scared.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
That's what I would assume.
Like if it feeds off of fear, you would think so.
That's what
But
I would
any
assume.
acknowledgement, I think, of anything could kind of give
Make
it a little power.
Manifest to, yeah, I can see that.
Hopefully for Liliana's sake, it was not darkness.
No.
Pulling blankets off in the middle of the night is, I've said it before, we've had stories about that before. I cannot do that.
No.
I hate that so much.
I could never.
When you're in bed, you're just like supposed to
Safe.
be at peace. Yes.
Safe. I am safe in my bed, and that is not going to change. I am interested to know what songs was it turning on the radio, and what shows was it flipping back to? Was it flipping back to something specific,
Like,
or
did it
was
have
it just
preferences?
Yeah, or was it just
Like,
kind
I
of
want to
like
watch my Days of Our Lives.
Yeah, or was it just like changing it to whatever it could? I'm really interested to know that. Because you know, sometimes we've had stories where ghosts listen to like classical music, or they play classical because
like they'll turn it off of rap or the pop that's going on and turn it back to a classical station.
Yeah, so I would like to know.
Let us know when you email us some more of your new house stories. But thank you for sending that in. This next email comes from Tammy. Hi there, my name is Tammy. I love your show. You guys always manage to spook me out, lol. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life and wanted to share some of them with you guys. So my very first paranormal experience started when I was 16 years old. I stayed in a small 2-bedroom house with my younger brother and parents. My brother made himself a cool room in the garage while giving me one of the bedrooms. When we moved into the place, something didn't quite feel right, and when I was clearing out some of the junk from previous tenants, I found a syringe in the room that I knew was a little girl's room before me. The syringe had a yellow liquid in it, and it had a needle. Creeped me out as well as disgusted my mom, and I didn't question what was in it, and just threw it away, sanitizing the whole house.
Hello? I would have had, like, there's no way I could have slept another day without getting that tested and knowing what it was. Was it like a recreational drug? Was it something to harm someone? What, like, was it medication? What is in the syringe? What's in the box?
Either way, yeah, I'd really need to know.
I'd have
to know.
But
I would also be disgusted and be like, ugh, I need to clear my whole house.
Oh, 100%.
Shortly after that, strange stuff started happening, and I started feeling extreme fear at night while trying to sleep. I am an artist, and I had many drawings in my bedroom that I was working on. While I was lying awake battling to sleep, some of my pictures fell from my corkboard, and I heard a crumpling sound, almost as if something or someone was walking on my drawings. Now, I didn't believe in ghosts back then, but the fact that I couldn't explain it freaked me out, and I shut my eyes tight until there was silence. I eventually fell asleep, and when I woke up, I saw my drawings were crumpled, torn, and also wet.
Wet?
I just picture a wet spirit.
Like a swamp monster. Yeah, I'm getting freaked out.
I was picturing more like The Ring.
Long wet hair. Yeah.
It was so creepy, and I really didn't want to be in that bedroom anymore. I convinced my parents to swap bedrooms with me, and nothing strange ever happened again. I'd like to know if anything happened with your parents.
Me too, because obviously they're not going to tell you as a kid.
Yeah.
They would never tell you. They might tell you now.
And why were they tearing up her drawings?
What were you drawing?
Good question.
That's
another reason for everyone to send us their art.
Yes. People have been actually doing that, and it's making me very happy. A lot of crocheters, a lot of people that are just like doing artistic things.
Oh, someone was making a suit jacket and stuff, like a costume.
Saw that.
It makes me happy to see people's art.
Me too.
3 years later, I made a friend with someone 5 years older than me, and while talking about creepy experiences in our lives, she mentioned this house that her and her sister were absolutely terrified of, and the way she described it, it sounded terrifyingly familiar to the house I stayed in. So I asked if she had a photo.
Oh no.
She showed me a picture of her and her sister standing outside the house, and I gasped. 4 years before I stayed in the house, she lived in that exact house with her parents and sister, and just like me, refused to sleep in the smaller bedroom as they felt their hair being pulled and stuff would be flung at them. We were terrified. What a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence.
No.
It's
There's
not.
some kind of connection.
Oh my
through
gosh.
The house.
Imagine, you don't even know, you buy like the monster house of the street.
Yeah.
You don't even know when you move in and all the neighborhood kids are terrified of your house and you're just like, oh, we're just moving
We had a story like that last year around Halloween. I don't remember if it was our Halloween episode or if it was something else, but we had a story where they moved into this really cool, like architecturally strange house, and all the kids would like make fun of them, like, that's the spooky house, that's the house of the guy that did these bad things.
Yeah.
And they didn't know that until they moved in. And then
Horrifying.
it had like the thing peeking in on the windows. That's that one. If you haven't seen that one, that was a spooky one.
That one has stuck with me. When you said the house, I was like, yeah, that's the one. I know. I'll never forget that. I forget a lot of the stuff we talk about on here, but
there are a few
never
specific stories.
Never forget that one.
That very night after we discovered we had shared the house at different times in our childhood, I was in the bathroom taking a warm bath before dinner. Her cat sat on the washing machine at the end of the bath, and I tried to call him to come over for pets, but he just stared at the mirror in the opposite wall. I got up and wrapped a towel around me and looked into the mirror. The mirror was steamed up from the hot bath, but I felt a wave of fear as I looked to the bottom right corner and saw a horrible face staring at me.
I gotta put this tea down.
Just the top of its face visible. It had an unrealistic, huge grin with big white teeth, its eyes wide at me. His skin was dark and he just stared. Even though the mirror was steamed up, its face appeared to be on top of the steam. I screamed and ran out of the bathroom crying, as this truly terrified me, and I don't think this entity was harmless.
Oh my god.
It made me feel that same fear I felt from my old house. My friend calmed me down, but was also scared. Safe to say, we did not sleep that night, and I went home the next day. I have many more experiences, but won't creep you guys out more, lol. Kind regards, Tammy. Thank you, but we need more. I got chills remembering that story because sometimes I choose these a while in advance, and this is one of them.
Bathroom horror. I can't do it. Shower horror. Just mirrors. It's all bad.
Yeah.
And the cat saw it too.
A little spooked that it was kind of on top of the steam. Like the steam didn't affect it in any way.
Like it wanted to be seen.
Mhm.
Like it was just waiting.
It was
How long was it
smiling
there?
at her, watching her.
I don't even know what to say. That is so disturbing.
I wonder if it's connected at all to the old house.
I feel like no, because if that house has something attached to it, I don't think it's gonna. Well,
It
maybe
could attach itself to
if they're
them.
both.
I don't know. I don't know how any of this works. We are novices, okay? These are all theories. Everything we talk about, these are theories. We say
Our
what we
own
think.
thoughts.
We look up what we can. Let us know what you think because it's not like we know everything about any of this.
No, but now I'm thinking, I don't know, since the girls talked about it, are they like letting it
Giving it energy.
to come
Bringing it to
wherever?
life a little
Yeah. Oh no.
That is so creepy considering we talk about them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
What?
Last night. Okay. So, like I said last episode, I hope it's just like hypnagogic hallucinations. But as I was falling asleep last night, well, first of all, let me back it up. Okay. While I was working yesterday, I was sitting on the computer and I had my back to my window and it was starting to get a little dark.
Why? Why would you do that? Why do you have your back to the window, first of all?
I don't know. It's
What's
just
wrong with you?
the most comfortable spot. Anyway,
Anyways.
I felt or heard this like, not a whistle, but like near my ear. And I didn't even turn around. I was like, I'm not giving it power, whatever it is. Hopefully it's just my ear because I've been sick. Natalie got sick and then I got sick and my whole house got sick. Hospitals were involved. It was a whole mess this last week. But I was like, maybe it's just my ear releasing pressure. Like, you know. So I was like,
logical.
you know what? It's nothing. Okay.
Mhm.
That happened. And I just felt this weird prickle on my skin, you know, just like, you know, feelers up. As I was going to sleep, I was drifting off into sleep and I hear, hey. And I thought that it was Jake. So I opened my eyes, but then all I could hear was him like slow breathing, like he was going to sleep. So I'm hoping that maybe I was just like drifting into sleep and it was like a hypnagogic, I cannot say that word, hallucination. And I was like halfway into a dream or something. I don't know. But as I was saying, like, I hope that we're not bringing power into any of these things as we talk about them.
You might be. I'm not.
Just out of here.
I'm not. I don't believe when we leave this room, I don't believe in any of it, and none of it is real. It only exists in this room, and like whenever you're not here, I don't come in here. If I don't come in here whenever I'm home alone, just because like we talk about it in here, it is contained in this room.
I'll start putting that in my mind as well.
When we leave this room, it's all fake, and it's hee hee ha ha. None of these people exist.
Okay.
People are still commenting on whatever video it was that I was talking about hearing my name whispered. People are like, yeah, it happens all the time. One person told me it's like, what did they say? They were like, you're having hallucinations. And I was like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But I haven't heard anything like that in years. That's disgusting.
That's one of the first time I can't recall a time where that's ever happened to me. Anyway, let's move on. Tammy, please send us everything you have. I'm intrigued about your life now. This is FoxGoblin from last episode. First of all, I wanted to say I'm a new subscriber and I'm so glad I found you both. I have been looking for a good podcast to listen to and yours just makes me feel cozy and a little spooky. Also happy to say I have just found your YouTube and definitely already subscribed. Thank you for making my evening feel more cozy and spooky in my favorite season. Thank you.
Thank you.
But anyway, I wanted to say I sent a previous email and I hope that got to you. I thought I would send this one too, as this is my most horrific haunting I have been dealing with for most of my life. Even more scary than that China doll.
Oh God, okay.
And that was terrifying.
That one was scary.
Also, I wanted to write a little bit more background on me. This experience I've not spoken to anyone about, except my therapist and a few mediums, because it is still happening to this day. I've had few unexplainable experiences throughout my life. I can email you them later if you would like to hear them. Yes. I am now 30, and I have been an empathic pagan witch since I was 15 years old. Due to this experience I am writing to you about. I still can't explain it, and have spent most of my life trying to debunk it. I was even going to therapy at one point to see if it's an unknown trauma response, which thankfully it's not.
Interesting.
The specific experience started around the years 2008-2009. I was about 15 and still a student in the only secondary school in my small town. I live in the small rural farming town in the southwest of England and have my whole life. My town is very beautiful and is also surrounded by a lot of historical sites and a lot of lost history. The church and graveyard I walked through being one of those sites. Around this time of my life, I started to become more sensitive and intuitive with myself and what I was seeing daily. I have always seen things and never thought it was a rare ability. But around this time, I actually started to realize it was something others couldn't do at all, making me somewhat feel a little out of place and a bit of an outcast to my Catholic school and friends. It wasn't the first experience I had of the unexplained, and to this day, things still happen. I do remember before my scariest story, I did have a strange incident where I saw an old cat in my grandparents' home. It's not a strange thing, usually no, but this was strange because my grandparents hadn't had a cat since my mother was a child.
Oh my God.
More phantom cats.
I love it.
I remember walking up the stairs to go to the bathroom, which you had to walk along the hall way back past the stairs toward the end of the hall. The house was a 3-bedroom, and there were 2 bedrooms along the hallway and one directly in front of the stairs. So as you walk up the stairs, you're facing a room looking out to the back of the house. Well, this room used to be my mother's when she was a child, and now it was a dressing room for my grandmother. So anyway, as I was climbing the stairs, I remember looking up and into the room. Sitting in the doorway and looking directly at me was a beautiful cat. I stopped in my tracks for a moment as it confused me, mainly because my grandparents didn't have any cats in my lifetime, only 2 little Jack Russell dogs. And with the fact that this cat didn't seem to be alarmed or nervous at my presence, it was as if it felt right at home. I could remember that this cat wasn't transparent or what you usually expect from a ghost cat. I remember looking at the cat, and it was a tortoiseshell ragdoll with huge green eyes and a red collar that had the name Billy on it. Hello?
My shirt. Oh my God. Love the
We have
description of that cat.
It sounds beautiful. I remember not thinking much about it and carried on with what I was doing, going to the bathroom. When I came out and went to go back downstairs, this time not seeing the cat, but the door. As I walked towards the room, I, for one reason or another, started looking for it, calling out its name and looking behind the clothing that was hanging up. There was a huge bay window looking out into the back garden, and I remember it going towards there when I went into the bathroom, but now it was nowhere to be found. Shrugging it off and thinking it must have gone downstairs, I decided to go downstairs myself, and when I didn't see the cat, I mentioned it to my grandparents, and parents who were all sitting in the living room facing the back garden. For some reason, I picked up on the fact my mother seemed to look very uncomfortable as I described the cat, and what it was called before she said we should leave. What? Only a few years later in life, when I was older, I mentioned it again after dreaming about the same cat, and I asked my mother why we had left so suddenly. Apparently, the cat I saw was actually my mother's childhood cat that went missing mysteriously when she was 6 years old. And the fact that I saw it in the room was eerie because it was my mother's old room, and Billy always used to love watching the birds in the back garden through the bay window. After that sighting, it seemed to open the floodgates on the many encounters I've had since, from seeing and hearing animals growl that weren't there, to feeling something I can't see or being physically touched and scratched. That is so strange. We've had 2 stories now of seeing the shadow figure or the ghost or the cat in this case for the first time, and then suddenly, boom, everything starts happening.
Yeah, that is strange.
But this story I wanted to tell you about goes far beyond anything I've ever experienced, and it still haunts me to this day. It all started when I was in secondary school, about 15 years old. I ended up going home because I had a headache or felt unwell. Can't really remember, but I do remember the day was bright and very warm out. It must have been September, literally the other side of summer. And today was like any other day, hot and noisy. I decided I wanted to walk the less noisy way, which was going through what the town called Bentley Lane. It's a small wooded area before a main road. The usual way most of the kids walked and my usual way home. But today, to avoid the noise of traffic and a quicker, more pretty way home, I decided to cross the road and cut into an old graveyard. Usually, it's not a bad walk to walk through, and it cuts off the only road in and out of my town. It was recently being redone due to recent flooding from the river and rainstorms that were so strong that the graves had started to lift up out of the ground.
Oh no.
I remember not feeling too comfortable, maybe just unwell. As I walked through the graveyard, I remembered that it was so quiet, which was nice because of my headache. It was really bad at that point and I didn't want a lot of noise. I didn't feel uneasy or uncomfortable until I got to the second part of the graveyard, which was the oldest part and the most damage to the storm. As I walked through, I started to get an uncomfortable feeling and remember thinking I needed to get to the gate on the other side of the yard and get there as quickly as possible. I didn't really know why, as I knew I was alone and it was in the middle of the day. I also knew that I was about 10 minutes away from my home, and that is when I saw him. He stood in the corner of the graveyard, and for some reason, it stopped me dead in my tracks. Thinking back on it, I think it was out of fear. Fight or flight, only mine was fight or flight or freeze. And at that moment in time, I chose freeze. Well, as I stood there, I could make out he was a very tall and imposing figure. He had his back to me and seemed to be standing over a grave that was broken and most likely been moved. I felt a little strange, like I wasn't meant to see them, or rather, they shouldn't see me. And it was as if something let me go and I was able to move away. Well, I took no chances and bolted for the gate, shutting it behind me, and with hesitation, I ran down the hill. I didn't even look behind me as I made my way to the bottom of the hill because the feeling of dread washed over me. I remember this person made me feel very scared and threatened. I didn't really know why at the time. So backtracking a little, I want to describe what I saw and still see when I mentioned him. For some reason, I felt he was male, in his late 50s maybe. He had a full black trench coat on with the collar up. It stood out because it was quite warm that day. He also had a dark hat on, which was pulled forward, so I couldn't make out any features. I can also remember when I stood frozen, I was hearing a low mumble of words. I couldn't make them out or understand, and for some reason, I thought it sounded like Latin.
Oh my God.
The reason why I remember it so well was because along with the words, which for some reason I was 100% sure were coming from him, even though he was on the other side, there was also a horrid stench of rot and what I could only describe as sulfur.
It's a demon.
I didn't stop as I felt the overwhelming feeling that the male figure had noticed me and I needed to get home. Again, I'm not really sure why I felt so threatened.
I am.
Feel threatened?
I'm sure.
Yeah. For some unknown reason, I was being told to look over my shoulder. I needed to turn around, so I peered over the large bushes and I saw that this figure was gone from where he stood. He seemed to have completely vanished, and I didn't know where he was. Calming down a little, I brushed it off to maybe he had just left the other way. And I was just being silly and playing tricks on myself. But I obviously felt a little bit uneasy and started to speed up with my walking when I turned again for a second time, hearing some snap behind me. I remember I heard the gate opening and shutting rather hard behind me, bearing in mind I was halfway down the hill at this point, and saw that this person was at the gate that I had just left. And he was looking directly at me. I could now see that he had a dark, full beard with a scary, full smile and really dark eyes. His skin looked sickly pale. I instantly panicked and started to walk backwards, still looking at this man at the top of the hill. I remember thinking it wasn't possible for him to get there that quickly, because it was a big field. It wasn't a small graveyard. That was when I felt my stomach drop, as while I was looking at this man for what felt like ages and could have only been seconds, I heard a deep, low growl, and he started to run full speed at me.
I knew it. I knew it was about to happen, but I'm scared.
Obviously, I bolted towards home faster than I ever ran before, suddenly feeling like I was in real danger, and I literally ran all the way home. I remember shouting for someone to help me or anything as I ran through a dog walker's field, but no one would help me. I remember every time I turned around, I could see this man was getting closer to me and was grunting and laughing as he chased me home. The man didn't look or act like a ghost, except the way it ran at me, and their eyes didn't look natural at all. In my gut, I knew I had to stay away from him. I knew I was in a lot of danger, and if this man got to me, something really bad would happen. So I ran literally all the way home and got into my house, locking the front door and sliding into my kitchen under the kitchen counter, which had a large bay window looking out into the front garden. I knew he was outside, as I could hear him laughing and calling my name, which he wouldn't have known as I didn't recognize him at all. I was in tears as I could hear that he was tapping the window lightly, knowing I was hiding under the windowsill. Again, this was in the middle of the day and it was sunny and bright. After I heard him bang on the window for a third time, I couldn't take it anymore and ended up ringing my grandparents, and my granddad answered. I told him in full-blown panic that I've had someone following me home from school and I needed help because I felt I was in danger, as they're standing right outside the garden, not wanting to look to see if they were still there. My granddad said he would come over as quickly as he could, and at the time he stayed on the phone as he could hear the banging on the windows. He was also trying to help me calm down because I was full-blown panic mode. He could hear the banging too.
That makes it so much scarier.
When my granddad got to the front of my garden, he told me to stand up so he could see me, and I managed to stand up after being huddled in a ball for what felt like hours. My granddad was saying no one was there, that the man had seemed to have gone and everything was okay. But to my horror, when I stood up, I was greeted by the same man from the graveyard standing right next to my granddad. I told my gramps to get away from the man as he stood right next to him and that he was mocking me by bowing as if it was all a game to him. He was slowly waving at me from the other side of the garden. The scariest thing I ever heard was my gramps saying there was no one here and he couldn't see him at all. He could hear the banging on the window.
Yeah.
But couldn't see him. The taunting, the bowing, and the slow wave at her like, what are you going to do?
She didn't even do anything to provoke this.
She just walking home with a headache.
And the fact that he could hear it, but could not see it. So it is real, but why is it only presenting to her physically? And I feel like the reason people weren't stopping to help is because she's running around saying help, but like they're looking and they're like, no one's chasing you, dude. Like, relax. That's like a huge fear of mine, is like being in danger and needing help and being out in the world and nobody helping. I had a dream about that the other night. I was walking and I like, for some reason, couldn't get back to where I needed to be. And I was looking at like my GPS on my phone and I was trying to run in the direction, but the directions kept changing and it was making me panic. And this guy came up out of nowhere and he was like, hey, Natalie. And I didn't know who he was. And I was like, oh, hi, like just trying to remain calm. And there were people, like there was like a gas station. There were people around. He walked up and grabbed my arm and started pulling me and I started screaming. Nobody helped. They were all just watching.
I'm freaked out.
I'm very freaked out.
I think I may have fainted after that, as I don't remember much else, but I remember waking up in my bed. It was later as it was dark outside, and I remember waking up because I could hear a low chuckle from my corner of my room next to my window. I thought I was just hearing things and looked toward the corner, feeling slightly sick as the room smelt like sulfur. So I turned on my bedside lamp to see if it was my dog or maybe a teddy. And for a split second, I thought I saw a figure standing and staring at me from the corner of my room. I remember I jumped out of bed and ran to turn the main light on, and my mother came rushing in, making me look over to her and back to the corner of the room, but of course, he had gone. After that, my window was locked shut and I didn't open the blinds for years. I slept either with the main light on or most of the time just didn't sleep at all. My mother took me to see a therapist as she thought I was hallucinating, but nothing came from it.
What do you do as a parent? Like if
That's
you
what I
can't
was
see
thinking.
it, what do you do?
I don't blame her mom for taking her to a therapist.
No, because that would be
you
my
can't
normal
see it
reaction.
either. So you're thinking, well, maybe something's wrong. Maybe the headache is connected in some way.
That's what you're hoping too. It's like, oh, let me take her to a professional. They'll tell us what's going on and it will get better and we'll find a solution.
Yeah.
But for the therapist to be like,
no, she's totally fine.
it's fine.
I also had awful recurring nightmares about him attacking me either in my bedroom, the alley behind my house, or even walking to and from school. He always attacked with a knife, and the same smell of sulfur could be smelled every time I was woken up. I always heard him calling my name, mocking and teasing me, even feeling and sometimes seeing him stalking me when I was walking around town with my friends or family. Could you imagine seeing him from afar and he's just smiling at you, looking at you?
And then you tell your friends, hey, look, there's that man. And they're
no
like,
one can see him?
No. That's like one of the most terrifying things I can think of. You're just trapped in your own mind, basically.
Yeah. Even to this day, after I have moved out of my childhood home, he's still around. He stands outside my side window in the living room and across the road and watches me. I've even asked my neighbors if they'd seen anyone hanging around my house, and all of them say no. I ended up falling out of religion after this event and turned towards paganism, spiritual paths, which has seemed to help, and I've even spoken to and visited a few mediums to see if they could get some answers of what or who this figure is and wanted. They all said that he doesn't like talking and hasn't got a lot of answers, and they said they think he is not a ghost, but something much darker who has attached itself to me.
Yep.
He will never tell them his real name. The only understandable answer that they got from him is that the reason why he is attached to me is because he likes me.
I hate that so much.
So I taught myself how to protect and cleanse myself by putting up protection around the house and keeping crystals and herbs all the time. I actually got a beautiful black cat called Salem, which he seems to be scared of. Don't ask me why. Good.
I love that.
I also went to my town's heritage center and asked for anything to do with the old graves and if there were any archives of names. Strangely enough, I was told that the book and documents from the old church were actually lost earlier that year, and no one knew where it had gone. So I still have no clue who this man is or was.
I don't think it was a real person.
I also don't believe it was a person.
Like, I don't think it was just someone that was buried in the graveyard. It does not feel of this world.
I just got chills all over my face. He appeared after the graves had kind of risen from the floods and like broken out almost. Like what was released? What was buried in that old cemetery?
I don't know. It doesn't feel like it was a person though.
I still see and hear him trying to call me to come closer. He still frightens me a little, as he is getting increasingly more hostile and banging around the outside of my house at night. I'm just so glad to say that he hasn't made it inside. But that is my story about my not-so-friendly ghost, or whatever he is. Even writing this to you, I am sat in my living room watching him pacing back and forth outside. He doesn't seem to like me talking about him. I have many more experiences I can tell you about, but this one was the most disturbing and scary experience in my life. If you would like to hear more, you can email me anytime. I have other encounters from the time my 2 imaginary friends turned out to be not so imaginary, and the time I was touched by some non-human creature that lives in an old RAF home turned into a child's nursery. I'm sorry for the long email, but I hope you find it interesting. I wish I could say this was just a figment of my imagination, but I have spoken to my therapist and mediums about it, and they say it doesn't make sense. I hope this gets to you, and I hope to talk to you soon. Kind regards, Louise.
I am sorry you're going through that. First and foremost, because what? I'm scared. I'm really scared. Like, should we even be talking about it?
That's what I was just thinking. I'm honestly speechless.
My head hurts.
I'm
I got
about
a
to go email her right now.
Either you accept it, give him a name, and just say, oh, that's Timmy.
You know what? I
Or-
think everyone here, everyone watching, listening, you and I included, need to pray, send positive vibes, whatever it is that you do to call out into the world, into a higher power. We should do that and send it to FoxGoblin's direction.
Yeah. This feels so dark and so scary.
Let's all do that now.
This might be the scariest listener story. I don't know.
I'm thinking so.
Because it's the longevity of it. It's not like the one with the crouching and the crawling away. That one got me, and that one will stick with me for life. But that was a quick moment. This is a long time.
With her for a long time, yeah. For what, it's like 15 years now? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I feel honored to have been trusted with that story, and
I feel something. I don't know if it's honored.
All of the ghosties who believe in a higher power are sending you all of the positivity, all of the light, all of the love, and all of the protection.
Period.
Okay, moving on. This next one is from Emma. Hi girls, I'm a new listener from Sweden and I'm obsessed with your content. I have so many scary stories that I want to share with your podcast, and because English is not my first language, you have the rights to change the composition of my story so it becomes more grammatically correct. I have, since I was a kid, had many sightings and experiences with the paranormal. I would say that I'm sensitive to the paranormal. From my deceased great-grandmother helping me choose the prom dress and sitting at the end of my bed, to disembodied voices screaming my name while I'm home alone, and seeing a girl peeking from my bedroom door. Screaming? I've also had a lot of other encounters, as a creature sitting outside my bedroom window, and a feeling of a strong unease as I heard footsteps on the top floor. But as disturbing as those were, there are a lot more coming from my place of work.
Oh no.
You see, I work as a nurse.
I was about to say you're a nurse or a doctor. I know it. I knew.
Or a nursing assistant in my early years. Mostly night shift and with elderly people, both in facilities in their own homes, but also in ICU at the hospital. And let me tell you folks, there are more encounters than I could put in one email. So let me list a few of the more freaky ones.
I know it.
So there was a time in my life where I worked night shift in a facility for elderly people, most suffering from dementia. Hence, there was a locked door in between the different sections. We had an elevator that mysteriously would transcend to the basement, though there was no one down there to call upon it. And we were always talking about the, quote, thing in the basement, having a laugh because the newer people would freak out when it happened. One time, as me and my colleague Alex were finishing helping one of the other colleagues downstairs, we were going upstairs to meet with our other colleague. To picture the stairwell, there were stairs all the way from the basement to the upstairs. We were joking and talking, and as one of us laughed at a thing the other said, we heard a mocking version of our laugh coming from the basement part of the stairs. Both of us looked at one another, white as sheets, and ran all the way back upstairs.
No. No.
The same night, I was sitting in a room with a sleeping patient to keep her company while she slept. I was all alone on my floor and had checked in on my other patient before sitting down in her room, and everyone was fast asleep. The whole floor quiet. After a bit, my phone rang, and as it was Alex, I answered. She sounded perplexed and asked if I needed help or something. As I said no, she hesitated and told me that they could hear running footsteps on the floor that I was on. I got such an uneasy feeling because there was only one patient able to get up from their bed alone, and they were visiting family. Safe to say, I didn't want to be alone for one more moment that night. Another time in my life, I worked as an assisted nurse, but in home care. So I was driving around at night checking up on my patients and helping with their toilet runs or just making sure they are safe.
My eyes are watering.
Me and my colleague were going to a patient that we joked about living in a haunted house. because of the eerie feeling that settled in our stomachs every time we went into her home. This was an elderly lady using a walker, suffering from dementia, living in a big farmhouse by herself, with a baby gate keeping her from ascending the stairs. We parked our car to let the headlights light our way to the front door, as we always did. The house looked like it always did. Dark and ominous.
No.
You ready?
Why are you smiling? No.
As we walked inside her house, we heard giggling. Any other time, there would be silence and we would just check up on her to make sure she hadn't fallen over or anything. So immediately, goosebumps on both of us. We walked to her bedroom and found our little lady sitting on her bed, giggling. I crouched down to look at her face and ask her what was going on, but she kind of looked through me and said in a quiet voice, "Bang." I looked at my colleague and were met with the same confusion I was feeling, but when I was going to ask further questions, we heard a loud bang from upstairs. Like a teenager mad at their parents, banging their door shut. We froze, looking at each other, wondering what the actual F we were going to do. We were about 20 and felt immortal, so after a lot of talk, we convinced ourselves that she must have had a window open and therein it had just blown shut.
Hey, I'm about 20 and I don't feel immortal. What?
Well, you're 25 now, so.
Hey, we don't have to talk about that.
Okay. So against our better judgment, we went to the stairs. At first, we noticed that the lights were on, which weren't on when we went in. But we decided to be brave and venture up, all while the little lady kept giggling. Upstairs, all the doors, cabinets, windows, you name it, were open wide and every light was turned on. Where was the thing that made the loud noise if there wasn't anything being shut? Still, we went around, shutting the doors, windows, shutting all the lights off. We even checked for timers, but there were none. Going down, we heard the lady say, "I know you think it's funny, but the girls were really scared." Peeking around the corner, we saw her, once again, laying down in her bed, but on her side, obviously talking to someone that wasn't there. That was our cue. We were out of there. We ran to our car, jumped in, and locked all the doors, and just let out a sigh of relief. But then my colleague said really loudly, "Emma, start the car, let's go." And when I looked toward the house and saw in the upstairs window a light being on and something standing there watching us leave. Trust me, if there was someone apart from that lady, we would have seen them in our venture from room to room upstairs. There wasn't one more night that I went to her home, and if I had to, I would stand by her door and keep it open for a quick escape. I've also seen things peeking around corners while being at my patients' homes, although they are staying there alone. So as you can see, I have quite a few experiences, both visual and audible, but one thing is for certain, I'd rather see the things haunting me rather than just a noise, because then I won't know who or what is making it. If you want to use some of the stories for the podcast, I would love to hear your reactions, but also don't hesitate to email me back if you want more stories. Believe me, I have many. With the best regards, Emma.
Emma. We've discussed it. Old people in the paranormal.
Yeah. The way she said bang before it happened.
I don't like the use of the word giggle.
That's something out of a horror movie.
Yeah. It just seems...
I'm glad
that old
she
lady
wasn't
is
scared.
Evil. That old lady is
She
evil.
is not. She has dementia
Oh
and
my.
thinks there's a friend there.
Oh my. But who is it? What is it?
I don't know, but they saw it looking at them as they were leaving.
I would have to quit. I could not.
Well, she was like, I'm not going back in there unless the door is wide open and I can run away.
I would never be able to go into someone's house by myself.
Especially at night.
I didn't even think of the paranormal aspect of like going into someone's house. So for a very short while, here's more part of my lore. For a very short while, I was working for the state. Very short while.
Yeah.
As an investigator of wrongdoings to people. And I was expected to go into people's homes. I was afraid of the people. I never put it together that what if these people are haunted? What if these people have paranormal stuff going on? You gonna put that in the report? What do you do with that?
You know what? That is a good question because I'd never thought about that.
It never crossed my mind. I need more stories from people that work in jobs like that.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God.
So Emma, if you've got any more, anybody else out there got any more, we're intrigued. Now to our last story. This one comes from Jasmine.
Is this one scarier?
This one's freaky.
Oh my God.
Hi, Ghosties Pod. As a new listener of the podcast, I've been enjoying each episode of your heartwarming back and forth. You can bet I'm a huge fan now. And as I was listening to a few of your first episodes, I began thinking over my own experiences. Sometimes I'll bring up a few of my personal stories with the seemingly paranormal when I'm with my friends. I know better and the topic of ghosts is raised, but otherwise, I try and keep the aspect of my history locked away, as it, even now, causes my pulse to rise and a feeling of unease.
I have such a headache today. Oh my god.
What a way to start your day.
I know.
So if you're willing to listen and bear with me, here is my story. You have my permission to share this and speculate on it. I feel completely unsure about it as a believer in odd things that go bump in the night in scientific reasoning, and so without further beating around the bush, it started when I was a kid. The first time I saw something was when I was 11. My childhood home was rife with verbal and mental abuse, so on nights when everyone was separated, I tried to sleep in early. I was lying in my bed, on my back, listening to everyone's noises when, out of nowhere, I heard heavy booted footsteps coming from my parents' room. First of all, I'm very sorry that you had to deal with that as a child. I knew my dad was sleeping in the basement, as that area was right underneath my shared bedroom and he was snoring loudly. I also knew my teenage sister was on the phone in the living room, possibly wearing headphones as she used to do. Lastly, my mother was in the attic, 2 flights above me, heavily typing on an old keyboard from the 2000s. The walls in my childhood home are thin, so sounds carry easily. And as we were a leave your shoes at the front door kind of family, I noticed the footsteps coming down the stairs. Do you know what I mean when you know the sound of other people you live with?
Oh yeah.
You know how family members and loved ones carry themselves and how they pat around on wood or carpeted flooring. Well, this was someone I didn't know.
That is such a scary feeling because yes, you do know who's coming in your house, like who it is, for it to be unknown.
For spatial context, I shared a room with my sister, and at the time I insisted on having the door open by a few inches. I was afraid of the dark, and the hallway light was like a comfort blanket. On the opposite wall, when the lights were off, you could see a long line of lights coming from the hallway. So I kept my eyes there, as that would give me a better indication of someone than from the view of the door lying flat on my bed. When the footsteps reached the hallway, I saw the shadow of a man. Tall, with a pronounced nose, emaciated looking, and bald. I saw his side profile with sharp clarity, and then looked at the door and saw a shadowy head. At this point, my throat usually closes up, and I have to pause to remind myself to breathe. But what's stranger than recalling what I saw is remembering how I reacted in that moment. As the man turned away and stood there, as if he was thinking, I was perfectly calm. I don't know if I was holding my breath, but I was stone-faced, watching him. I then looked at his shadow reflected on the opposite wall as he pulled away from the door. It was an eternity in less than a minute, and then he walked away, almost trance-like. I heard his booted footsteps go down the shorter set of stairs and disappear into the kitchen. I fell asleep soon after, my mind immediately rejecting what I had just seen. I remember that in the moments right after, I felt empty, totally empty, like I was a vessel. And that emptiness sent me off to sleep, I guess. From that point on, even to this day, when I'm about to go to sleep, I need to have the bedroom door closed. I need a fan on to fill the room with safe-sounding whooshing. And I need the lights off. I need to feel like no one is watching me.
That's a pretty valid need, in my opinion.
Oof, I have chills. Every time I tell that one, I feel like I need to get up and walk around. I feel like I need to take a walk too.
I do too.
Anyway, I have one other standout story, which is longer. But in between my first experience and my second, I would hear the sound of cabinets opening and closing when I was home alone. I would hear my name being called by voices not belonging to my family members, and I felt a strange, I don't know how else to say it, pull to turn my head to the boiler in the basement when I watched my Saturday morning cartoons, as if an invisible force was trying to move my head and redirect my attention.
No.
As for these experiences, I try not to chalk them up to anything. I was alone and a child when these things occurred, and I had an active imagination. But as with all the stories I list here, I feel extremely torn. Each story is tied to circumstances and particular timing in my life, so could I have just thought I saw something, heard something, felt something? I would do just about anything to know with absolute certainty if what I experienced was true or not. Considering all the paranormal instances I've experienced, there is only one time I can recall when someone else also witnessed something weird with me. This is separate from my second story. One night, my sister and I were in our bedroom. It was also a quiet night. None of the regular shouting from my parents, and my sister and I were in our respective beds when I noticed a bright red light peeking out between the window blinds. The red light was so vibrant, it was like a stoplight had been posted up there, but there had never been a lamp or streetlight there before. I asked my sister if she could see it, and she anxiously, almost breathlessly said, yes. I asked if I should look out the window, and she vehemently told me not to. Too afraid to move, we lay in our beds, not uttering a word, and watched as it hovered there until we both fell asleep. We haven't spoken about it since. However, my mother has stated she saw her father, who passed away, appear at her bedside, and on another occasion, she was video chatting with a friend when her friend said she saw a little girl behind my mom. My mother's friend asked her if my sister and I were back from school, and then my mom turned but didn't see anything.
Okay.
Was the red light like UFO or what was going on there?
I don't know. Was the man she saw her mom's dad? Like, who was that that guy?
I don't know, but I mean, she didn't feel threatened.
That's
she was
what I'm
just
saying. It's like,
blank.
to me, that just feels like a ghost. It's a person. It's like
He checked on her and then
turned
walked
around.
away. Yeah.
But she didn't recognize him.
No.
And you would think that you would at least see a photo of your grandpa if you never met him.
From 2017 to 2019, I experienced the worst of it. It, oddly enough, began at a Walgreens in the skincare section. Bear with me. In 2017, when I began my second job while going to school full time, I was standing in the skincare section of a Walgreens, looking over the organic facial cleansers, when I began hearing loud knocking in a pattern of 3. This knocking sounded like it was both far away and up close. I looked around, wondering why the few customers and the front workers weren't responding, but I paid it no mind and continued with my day. Several days later, I heard the same knocking. This time I was working at my first job at Panera. We were closing up and the baker in the back was wearing headphones. My coworkers on the food line were playing music out loud and our manager was counting registers in a soundproof locked room. I was the only one working alone as I was closing the bakery, so I went to the manager, got their attention, and told them inventory was here, assuming the knocking came from our stock guys. Inside the soundproof room, she told me to just let them in. So I went to the back door. Right before I was about to open the door, I felt a feeling of high strangeness. I would normally just open the back door, but this time I looked through the peephole and heard nothing. The knocking ended. On the third occasion, I was at home alone in my bed. My sister had moved out by then, and I was finishing homework on the floor when I heard the knocking again. I tried to ignore the heavy knocking, but at this point, I felt I had to confront it. I told myself that if the sound was my manifestation, then opening the door might end it. I went to the door, and before I opened it, I looked outside. The knocking stopped, and no one was outside. Whatever, I thought, and opened the door anyway. I said aloud, "Okay, whatever you are, whatever I'm hearing, okay, I get it." From that day on, I would sporadically hear footsteps walking around my room. At times, it would sound like running. My desk chair would creak and angle itself to face me, and I constantly felt watched. Her chair would angle itself to face her.
I know.
In the morning, I would note the chair facing my bed and try to forget the previous night's events. Oftentimes, disembodied footsteps would walk up to my bed, and one night I heard something as if whatever it was were right over my ear, shuffle closer to my head, and say, "Hey." Its deep masculine voice rattled me. I don't have much of a deep masculine voice. But I pretended to not hear it as I lay in bed, my eyes closed. Every night was a guessing game, as sometimes days would pass with nothing. Then a few nights in a row, I would hear or sense someone or something other than myself in the room. It was terrible. My last worst experience culminated in the most terrifying situation I've ever faced. I had woken up one night, lying on my back, my arms folded across my chest like an Egyptian mummy or Dracula from a Hammer horror film. This is an orientation I don't regularly sleep in, and my face was turned to my left, and although I was awake, I intentionally didn't open my eyes, hoping sleep would reclaim me. Then I hear footsteps coming from the corner of my room, the corner where there is no door. It walked to the foot of my bed, and then climbed up onto my bed. I felt its hands steady at my sides, and my sheets tightened where its hands and knees were. My sheets moved. This I know. They physically moved. It was over me, and it shifted its weight to the left and then gripped my jaw to face it. I felt its large hand holding my cheeks, and I swear I could feel it just over my face, willing me to look at it. And then, thank goodness, my mom came downstairs. Every night, my mom would come down the creaky stairs to use the bathroom, which was down the hall. The whatever it was over me held still, just as I was, still tightly closing my eyes. But when my mom tripped over a bucket, it dropped my face and quickly shuffled off my bed, further disturbing my sheets and bringing them lower down my body. I heard it back away almost like it was afraid of being caught. While my mom used the bathroom, I remained motionless. I was afraid it would come back, and so after a few minutes and my mom finished, I launched upright. I was hyperventilating, trying to catch my breath, and noticed my sheets were in complete disarray. I sleep with my sheets up to my chin. This wasn't normal. Not like it disappeared. It crawled back down. Anyway, that was the last of it. I would hear footsteps here and there for a few months after, but not as pounding or rushed as earlier. In 2019, the relationship with my parents became completely non-sustainable, and I felt beat living under stress, judgment, and fear at all hours of the day. So I moved out one night. I slept that night with my boyfriend, who is now my fiance. Life is better without fear, and I'm thankful every day to be away from that place. I hope this email finds you both well. Thank you for all the stories, and I hope you both have a safe and happy autumn season. Cheers, Jasmine.
I'm happy for you that you are in a better situation.
Yes.
But that is one of the scariest things I've ever heard.
Climbing on her bed, holding her face, turning her face to face it.
As soon as it got away, I'd be like, "Mom, Mom, Mom!" Like, oh my God.
Well, she heard it back away, back into the corner of the room, so it could have still been there. She was afraid that if she woke up, it would see her.
Oh my
awake.
God.
That is so terrifying.
I'm glad she didn't look at it.
You know what? I'm thinking, because she said things were always like high stress, high fear, high anger in her house.
That's when things
and
can
is that
happen.
like those feelings of negativity like manifesting, inviting something in?
I was going to say that. I was going to say that at the beginning, but I was waiting. Yes, that was my first thought. When you're in a home like that, I feel like it's just opening the door.
This was an intense episode.
Happy
the knocking
Halloween.
kind of reminded me of Jumanji.
No, the knocking reminded me of your bed. Your story.
Yeah, but it was like happening all over the place, you know?
Is that scarier to you?
All over the place?
And
than
that
just your
nobody
bed?
else hears it?
I think so.
I don't like the stories where these people are like in public and people can't see it.
Yes, like FoxGoblin, like Jasmine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that would make me feel insane. What do? You're like, hey, y'all heard that? And they're like, no.
It's almost harder to deal with. And maybe when it's darkness like that, it's on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Like they want to isolate you. They want you to feel alone, and that amps up the fear, that amps up the, you know, the low
the
vibrational
reach that they have.
feelings that you have.
My feet are cold, my hands are hot, and I have a headache. I feel really scared.
Well, happy Halloween week, everybody. We've got another Listener Stories episode this week on Halloween. We'll hopefully get it out that morning. Hopefully no sickness comes our way again. But we appreciate everyone taking the time to listen to us. We appreciate everybody who sent in a story. Thank you so much. It truly is an honor to be told these stories, because I know, and like some people have said, they don't really share these stories with many people. And I'm glad, and it makes me so happy that you guys feel like safe enough to send in these stories to us and share with our audience, because we have an incredible like family here at Ghosteas. Like we're all, I love the
when people comment to the people that write the stories,
that I just love how we feel. And like a lot of people have said it, like it's just like a sleepover and we're all just like friends, like telling each other spooky stories and talking about our lives and stuff. And I love that so much.
Me too.
I'm just thankful for all of you, really.
Yeah, me too. I'm terrified right now.
I'm also scared.
I can't be all like, hee, love it, because I'm really sick right now.
I'm trying to turn the vibes positive here.
Yeah, but thank you for listening. Thank you for sending.
The best way to support us is to subscribe if you haven't already, and like this video for the algorithm. Leave an emoji. What emoji should we have?
A pumpkin.
It's
almost Halloween.
Yes, leave a pumpkin for Halloween. If you're still here with us, share this video if you feel compelled to do so with any of your spooky friends or anyone who enjoys stories like this. And if you're on podcast, leave 5 stars, please. Like I said, you can send in your own stories if you feel comfortable doing so. You can email them to us at ghostiespod@gmail.com. That's the best way to kind of keep it organized for me.
Yes.
I don't want to lose anybody's story. But other than that, we will see you Thursday.
Goodbye.